Go here whenever. Sure. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it a lot.
This is Beach Talk Radio.
Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. This is your captain speaking, Mean Gene. Mean Gene. The following will be a test of the ship's whistle, the sonar alarm, the cable alarm, and the atomic attack alarm.
Live from Peach Time Out in the heart of Times Square. You're listening to Beach Talk Radio with Kim and Ed Ryan.
And hello, everybody, and welcome to Beach Talk Radio, episode number 161, coming to you live from Peach Time Out on Fort Myers Beach. As always, video of the show is available on our Facebook and YouTube pages. We're on Twitter and Instagram, and our news website is beachtalkradionews.com, where you can sign up for our free twice-a-week newsletter. Download our news app so you can receive breaking news from Fort Myers Beach when it happens. And as always, thank you to our great local supporting businesses, Island Oils, Fort Myers Tiki Tours, Nervous Nellies, Mangaritas, State Insurance USA, Sun Palace Vacation, La Ola Restaurant, Tuckaway Cafe, Blue Ribbon Events, Beach Pottery, Sunset Tropical Grill, and Shuckers. And of course, our longest running supporter since show number 1 back on August 5th, 2018. Peach Time Out. We want to say welcome to Congressman Byron Donalds. A big round of applause from our artificial audience. Thank you so much for coming back on the show.
No, it's a pleasure to be back.
We appreciate it. And we forgot to tell you that there was a swim meet. We didn't know either that there's a swim meet this morning. So there's some issues parking, but
I figued that out this morning.
Did you have to circle around or did you find one after a while?
It took me a minute. But you know, I try to build in next 10 minutes when I come to Fort Myers Beach just to park. And then I was like, oh, I needed 20. That's all right.
So I usually save the biggest and hardest question for the end, but I'm going to put it at the front today.
All right.
Congressman, what is the gym like at the Capitol? I mean, it's got to be like the most awesome gym you've ever been in.
Actually, I've not seen it yet.
Oh, you're kidding?
No, so Pelosi had actually had the gym closed and the showers closed up until 2 weeks ago. So just now members are allowed to go and use the facilities. It was that you had to, it wasn't technically closed, but there were only 2 members allowed in the gym and you were only allowed for 30 minutes and you had to make an appointment. And I'm like, I don't have time for this.
Right.
So I just have never been. I assume I'll probably get in there at some point, but haven't seen it yet.
Okay. So the serious question is, what's harder? Like the campaign that you had was, I mean, I don't know, 18, 19, seemed like there was that many people running for.
Well, there was 9.
All right. 9. It just seemed like there was a lot. What was harder so far, running for the office or now being in the office?
Oh, being in the office, without question. I mean, when you're running for the office, you know, your focus is specifically the voters at home and really the subset of voters who typically vote in primaries. Your message and the issues you talk about are pretty focused. You're talking, obviously, for our area, water quality. You're talking about tax policy. You're talking about the Constitution, immigration a little bit, so on and so forth. Up there, it's 100 miles a minute. You're having to deal with issues from all over the country, frankly, all over the world. At a moment's notice, some new issue drops in your lab. You have to quickly figure out what that is. The one part of politics that people don't really like, and I'll tell you, even the members don't like it, you're still fundraising. You're doing that all the time. And so, it's definitely the job is much harder than the campaign.
Why are you still fundraising?
Well, first part is that because we never close campaign accounts at the federal level.
Okay.
So, right now I'm fundraising because you just don't want to create a race you don't need to have. The one thing that does happen has happened to members in the past is they won the election, they didn't fundraise, and they woke up the next election year and somebody was like, well, I want to run. And now you have a fight on your hands and you have to go back and raise all the money. So you perpetually do it.
She brought that up yesterday. She's like, does Byron have to run again in 2 years? It's like crazy. It's every 2 years for the House.
And I was reading, you have quite a bit. You have raised quite a bit. I mean, you spent quite a bit too, but you have quite a bit of money in there.
Well, I mean, look, the purpose is to just stay consistent. I always tell my sons, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really about just staying ready.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second part of fundraising, which again, members don't like, but it's the reality of the process, is that as Republicans, we're trying to take the majority back.
Right.
In order to do that, you have to have the funds prepared to do battle in many different congressional districts across the country. And so even though, once we know we're fine here at home, I'm going to be helping candidates across the country to take back the majority.
So you had
in a second.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Let me just ask one more.
Yeah.
So you went before you won the election, or was it after? I don't remember. You got COVID.
Yeah.
So what was that whole experience like?
I had a fever for a day. I was tired for about 4. And then after that, I was just bored in my house.
Are you posting videos of your workouts and all that?
I was working out because I had nothing else to do. I was like, well, I might as well just work out. Then I was like, well, let me tell people I'm fine.
Okay.
People were really concerned. So I figured the best way to show people know that I was okay was I'll work out and then I'll post a video, and people will be like, oh, he's working out. So, if you're not good, you're not in the gym. So, right. But no, quarantine is boring, but it was necessary. You want to make sure you protect the people around you, in the community if you have it. So, you just quarantine, you do what you got to do. And then once you're cleared, you go back to life.
Well, this different question. So what is your feeling about there's been talk about vaccine passports and all this business. Where do you land on that? We
don't need that. I don't think we need it. I think it's too intrusive. Look, the reality is that by the end of next month, the vast majority of Americans, adults, will either have been vaccinated, if they don't want to be vaccinated or they're not vaccinated, is really because they just don't want to be. And so that's the trajectory we are on in the United States. Even with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine being put on hold, we still have more than enough capacity and more than enough opportunity for people to be vaccinated by the end of May if they want to. So the purpose of vaccine passports, like a passport is a permanent document you keep for all time. So why would we need that when the reality is most of the United States will be inoculated by the end of May, early June?
Do you think businesses will require that? Some businesses will require people to show proof of vaccination.
Some will. Yeah, I think some will. I mean, it depends on the business model. Like if you take cruise ships, and I know there's a lot being talked about with cruise ships right now between Governor DeSantis and Senator Scott and Rubio, and wanted to make sure the cruise companies are allowed to reopen. But if you're a cruise ship, which is you're literally, and people know this, if you're on a cruise ship, it's like a petri dish.
Right.
Because if there's a flu strain that goes through a cruise ship, it blows through a ship.
Right.
And so for cruise line companies, they may want to say, hey, we want to know if you've been inoculated or not. But other than that, I think most businesses aren't going to require. Listen, most businesses are just trying to get open.
Right.
They just want to get open. They want to go back to normal. They want people to come, and they're not going to put any additional burdens on people they don't need to.
So last question about the election. Can you get us up to date on what happened with that whole BS at the, like it was election day or the day before, where they tried to pull a scam or something?
Election morning.
Yeah. Where is that now?
It's in the hands of the FBI.
Oh, really?
We've turned all our information over to the FBI. We did an extended investigation
internally. So for people that don't know, can you explain what happened?
So election morning, there was a text message that went out to all the voters in Southwest Florida saying that I had dropped out of the race. And then there was a link in that text message which went to a fake YouTube page with a fake like news clip of me dropping out. And incidentally, what happened was in 2014, when there was the congressional primary, I did an interview with Fox 4 saying that I was not going to run. I was going to spend time with my family back in 2014. And you could tell it was 2014 because I didn't have a beard. Like it was like a goatee. And so I'm watching the news clip. Like if anybody looks at this, they're like, wait a minute, this guy has a beard. Like how did he shave it?
Yeah,
to
but
do
the
Fox
average
4?
person,
Right,
yeah.
right.
You know, but at any rate, so they doctored that footage. The people who did it, whoever did it, they doctored that footage.
Wow.
And created a fake page. So we had to go to YouTube. We actually had to have YouTube correctly take something down. That we actually went through the proper process to get something removed off social media. We had to go to the company that was sending the text messages, letting them know that it was not me and what was happening, and that they went and pulled that stuff down. They stopped sending them out. And when we went back and kind of did our own internal investigation, we took all our findings and we turned it over to FBI for them to go with it.
Who do you think did it?
The part about this, and this is where I've stepped back, and I don't want to get into that part.
Okay.
Because
if you're wrong, then you're accusing the wrong person, or you think you know?
I think I know.
Okay.
But the other part is that my job now is to look at the district and represent the district. We've turned all of our stuff over to law enforcement, and we've basically said, FBI, here's all the information. You follow through, and if FBI feels that they have to have do further investigation and bring criminal charges, and that's what they'll do.
And so did they tell you when they might give you the answer?
The FBI didn't tell you anything. All they say is, thank you for your submission. And we followed up a couple times. Hey, where is this? We're looking into the matter. That's all you get from FBI.
So making the jump, what's been the biggest challenge or difference or surprise making the jump from Florida State to the U.S. Congress?
Much more chaotic. There's no deadlines to do anything. And what I mean by that is, hold on, my nose is itching. And what I mean by that is that in Tallahassee, session ends.
Right.
There's a defined end to it every single year. The members know we have a balanced budget amendment, so we have to pass a balanced budget. We have to go through that process. We don't have a choice. It's in our Constitution. DC, no balanced budget amendment in our Constitution, so they can kind of do whatever. Because we meet full time, we meet year round. Mm-hmm. There's really no pressure to do anything or get anything done. And I think the other part is, and this is why I'm even more a supporter of congressional term limits now than I was before, but because there's no term limits, members realize that they can just stay as long as they want to. And so there's really no impetus to be focused on the things that are important to your district or things that are important to the country. You kind of just take your time as long as you want.
Right. So did they put you on any committees, or being that it's your first year? So how does that whole thing work? What committees?
They did.
You're on a lot of committees.
I got 3 of them. Yeah.
And how long are you here and how long are you there? How's it break down?
So about the committees, I'm on oversight, small business, and budget. Really good committees, and then there's the subcommittees we have, but the subcommittees haven't met too much. Frankly, the committees haven't met too much. And that leads to your second question: how long am I there? I've actually been home a lot. Yeah, which is good, for me anyway. I think it's been good to just be home and really go be around the district, see everybody, talk to different interest groups and community groups and citizens and see what they need. I'll really make sure our constituent service operations are up and running here at home, and they've been fantastic. They're doing a tremendous job. The people that work, the district staff here at home. And so we haven't been in DC that much. I think I've probably been in DC 6-7 weeks. Maybe 6 weeks.
What's
total.
The size of your staff? How big does a staff?
So I have 13.
Okay.
Some staffs vacillate between 16 and 10. I got 13.
Do they give you like a budget? Here's your budget. You can hire as many as you want. You can pay them what you want.
So every congressional office gets about $1.4 to $1.5 million.
Okay.
You are responsible, like the member of Congress is responsible to keep your office under that annual budget. If you go over that number, you, the member of Congress, are personally liable to write a check to the United States Treasury for what you overspend. And that goes for everything: staff, equipment. They call it franking mail, which is mail back to the district about different things that are going on in Washington. All that stuff is covered under the budget. It's
amazing they want you to be responsible, but they're not responsible for how much they spend. They just keep cutting checks and sending them out to people. I mean, isn't it funny? Isn't it funny? It's funny.
Maybe what we should do is make members of Congress liable for every dollar over the budget.
Right.
Then you would find a balanced budget coming out of Washington.
And quick.
Fast. It will happen tomorrow because we're not going to spend our money. We'll spend other people's money.
When you go into that building for the first time, are you in awe of what you see? You realize most people only see it on TV, and then you're in that big building, and it's just incredible.
Yeah, it actually is. It is one of the great honors, of my life. It's historic on so many levels. The number that's around now is that there's only been about 11,000 people in the history of the United States that have served in the House of Representatives. 11,000. And so, man, it's when you walk in there, especially the first time, you're kind of in awe, and I think, a lot of people say, I know, Senator Rubio has said it, you're kind of in awe. You're seeing all the people like, oh my gosh, this person's here, this person's there. And after a couple months, you're like, why are these people here? But no, it's great. It's really an honor. It's a historic honor. It's really a blessing. It's humbling. It really is, because you realize that everything you say and every time you push that button, yes or no, it has an impact on the trajectory of the country.
Where were you when this whole thing started to go down on January 6th?
I was on the floor.
Okay.
I was on the House floor. I went back to the Capitol because we were about to start the ratification of the Electoral College. And so I had to go back because I had to sign on to the challenge in states. So I signed on to Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. And so we were in the middle of Arizona at the time. And when the debate was going on, I was actually in the coat room just sitting back, because in the coat room, you don't have to wear your mask. But on the floor, she makes you wear your mask.
She ain't Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, because she fines us $5,000 per occurrence if we're not wearing a mask.
She has that kind of power to do that to somebody?
The Democrats let her put it in the House rules. And if it's in House rules.
Has it ever happened that somebody's gotten a fine? Because there's a mask mandate down here, but they've never really.
2 members have been fined.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Was it Cruz and Cruz?
No, it's not in the Senate. It's in the House.
Oh, that's right. I get it.
The senators do what
confused.
they want.
Oh, that's right.
The Senate has their own rules.
Oh, nice.
Which is why you could have somebody like, Jamie Raskin out of Maryland. When he was doing impeachment, he was an impeachment measure. So on the Senate floor, he's not wearing a mask because on the Senate, they don't have that rule. But on the House floor, he does have to wear a mask. I mean, literally, they're 200 feet away from each other. So we're like, this is the silliness that goes on. At any rate, January 6th, I'm on the floor. You could hear, we knew when the Capitol was breached. They made an announcement. And then when people were in the hallways of the Capitol, and the Capitol kind of echoes if people are loud enough, you could hear people moving down the hallway from the Senate, because they breached the Senate floor first, coming down to the House. There was a couple of us, myself included, thought we were literally going to be fighting. Right, hand-to-hand combat.
And you were ready for it. I mean, you don't need to be taken away by security. You're
listen, you got myself, you got a bunch of guys who are ex-military. There's some guys in there that can handle themselves.
But you also have, I mean, we heard about people kind of taking off name tags and taking off, because they didn't want to be, I would try to go hand-to-hand combat, but I would be scared to death if there was angry people coming down. I mean, I'd be like, I don't know anything.
Is your first thought like, okay, this doesn't really make any sense? They're not. This can't really happen.
Did you have enough time to process that this was going on? Or?
Well, yeah. And the first part is this really happening? The second part is, oh my gosh, this is really happening. Then your third thought is, really, what's going to happen next? Because now we're in uncharted territory.
Right.
What's going to be the response from Capitol Police? What are the intent of the people coming in? You don't know. Like, nobody knows, because we're on the floor, and at this point, we're supposed to be doing legislative business, but we're off that. People are on the phone with their families. Right. People are on the phone with their staff, trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And after that point, when they started evacuating us out, then it was just like, okay, how can we make sure all the people who need help can get out? A lot of the members are old, very, very old.
Right.
And so I'm 42. I'm fine. I could take care of myself. But we have a lot of elderly members. We have a lot of members who are female members. How do we get them to safety? What's the protocol to get them out of here? I remember one member, he was in a wheelchair. And so it was myself, Rodney Davis, who's a Republican on House Administration, and 2 of Rodney's staff. And we were literally the escort for this gentleman in the wheelchair. He was a Democrat. Didn't matter. Republican, Democrat, that stuff was out the window. It was about making sure other members got to safety.
Did you find, did they take you to places you never knew existed in that building?
No, not really.
Okay.
But we were kind of moving through the halls.
Secret tunnels?
No secret tunnels.
Is it your opinion that Trump had something to do with those people coming to the building in any way?
No. I think I was actually at the rally earlier that morning.
Okay.
So I was at the rally. The speeches were a typical
Political,
Trump rally,
yeah.
political speeches. That's what they were. When I got back to the Capitol, I didn't think anything of it. I knew that people were going to come down to the Capitol. That was pretty clear. I knew they were.
Really?
I knew they were going to come down. I didn't know they were going to breach. And I think that's the key difference. And
I don't think anyone.
Nobody saw that coming. Let me say this again. Nobody saw that coming. The one thing I find very interesting is during the impeachment trial, at one point the Democrats wanted to call Jamie Butler Herrera out of Washington. She's a Republican member out of Washington State. And so the Republicans were like, okay, well, if you're going to call her to testify, we're going to call Nancy Pelosi. Because what they wanted to see was, did Nancy Pelosi know something, or was she asked to provide additional support to the Capitol on that day? Once it was clear that she was going to have to testify, they pulled the request for people to testify in the impeachment hearing, because they didn't want to put Nancy Pelosi on the record. Because if they put her on the record, she would have had to testify that Capitol Police went to her asking for additional support that day, and she said no.
I don't remember seeing that reported anywhere.
That doesn't come out much, but that did occur.
So how do you think it happened?
The breach?
Yeah, I mean, how does something like that happen when the most important, people in the country are in one building and there's not enough protection to keep the thugs out?
Well, a couple things. One, what we found out now is that, the executives at Parler actually went to FBI and said, hey, this is what we're seeing on our site. There are people who are talking about wanting to breach the Capitol. So the Parler people, and the crazy part is that they delisted Parler for a month, saying that Parler was this avenue for January 6th. But they were saying, like, a Parler went to the FBI and said, hey, there's something going on. You guys need to be aware of this. What we found out now is that Facebook, most of the people were organizing on Facebook and Twitter, because obviously those are the largest means. To me, it was a failure on two fronts. It was a failure, number one, of people in the intelligence apparatus to accurately prepare. The second failure was, unfortunately, is you had people who went into that Capitol building who should have known better. I had this conversation with a lot of people across the country. They'll say, oh, but it was a setup. Listen, I have sons. If my son is hanging out with a bunch of kids, and one of these kids decides to enter that Dairy Queen,
you better not go
after hours. You have a decision to make as an individual.
Right.
Yeah, right. I agree with that.
And you better make the right decision, which is, hey, man, that's dumb. I'm not going in.
Yeah.
There were a lot of people who made that decision not to go in.
Got caught up in all the emotion, but you have to, as an adult, you got
to do better. And so there were probably 50,000 people at the Capitol that day, right? 50,000, 10 to 50,000, somewhere around there. Obviously, the vast majority did not go in the Capitol.
Sure.
The vast majority did not. But unfortunately, there was a couple hundred that did. And those couple hundred, they have to examine themselves and say, what were you doing? Like, what are you thinking? It's a federal building. The barricades are up. The building is closed.
Right.
You cannot go in. Like, it's just simple stuff.
The guy that was sitting on Nancy Pelosi's chair, all the politics aside, and yamming it up to the camera. And I'm watching, I'm thinking, you are an ass. It doesn't matter whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, whose room you're in. You're making a fool of yourself, and that will come out.
The point I make to everybody is, look, as Republicans, if we're going to say what was happening in Minneapolis or Washington or New York, or what's going on in Portland now, or what's going on in Minneapolis now is not okay, then we have to be consistent. It was not okay at all. And so the people who are getting prosecuted, we have to follow the law. We have to enforce the law.
Let's segue to Minneapolis for a second.
Oh my goodness!
The trial of the police officers going on, and we have this incident where a female police officer apparently thinks that she pulls out her taser and she kills a young black man, 20 years old, I think he was. Right. You're pro police. You were never in favor of defund anything like that. When you saw that incident right there, what were you thinking?
It was a horrific accident. I think that you have a situation where the officer, you can even hear her voice after, and that pretty much tells the tale right there, that there was never the intent to actually, to kill Dante Wright. But it happened. Mm-hmm. It's terrible. I think they've already brought her up on manslaughter charges. Right. She was arraigned, I believe it was yesterday. She was arraigned on manslaughter charges. It's tough. At the same time,
someone's dead.
Dante Wright tried to get back in his car. And look, again, I have sons. I tell my sons, if you engage law enforcement, be calm, do exactly what they tell you, and don't do anything stupid. Those are the rules. My 17-year-old son, he drives all the time. The second I gave him his keys, I said, well, if you engage police, be calm, do exactly what they tell you to do, and don't do anything stupid. And so when he decided to shake loose of the arrest process, well, let's take a step back. People are saying, oh, well, he had an air freshener. No, that's dumb. They pulled up behind him. They ran his tag. Once they ran his tag, they saw he had a warrant out for his arrest on a gun charge. That already heightens the officers to that degree. And so what you have is a horrific tragedy that could have been avoided. Frankly, if Mr. Wright didn't try to get back in his car. If he just stood there and let them cuff him and put him away, there's no way that she then pulls out her gun and fires around. And that's why it's just a horrific tragedy.
Do you think she should serve jail time?
I don't know. That's going to be for the jury to define. And that's really going to be for the investigation to fully go through. Because, again, with these instances, I can look at video and everybody's looking at it. It's like everybody's looking at the Chauvin George Floyd video. But I do believe it's irresponsible for elected officials to be chiming in on these matters. Right. You have to let the judicial process work. You have to let the court system work. You have to let prosecutors and defense attorneys do their job.
I asked you this last time you were here, just to ask you again. Young black men feel like they're targeted by police, and I kind of agree with that. Yeah. And why is that?
Well, I mean, look, one of the tough things is, especially growing up in inner city, is that we knew we were going to encounter NYPD. It was just a matter of time. Like, even if you're just walking down the street, they're going to pull up and be like, hey, where are you going? That happened to me when I was a kid. It has happened. At the same time, the one thing I want to stress for a lot of young kids in the black community is that if you look at the data is actually pretty clear that we do engage law enforcement, black men, at a higher rate than any other subsection of the country. In part, that's because young black men also commit, unfortunately, more often than not, most of the violent crime in the United States, specifically in urban communities. So if we as black men want to say we don't want to feel that the police are looking at us, then as black men in totality, we got to start deciding how are we going to comport ourselves. And it's tough to say that. I
was going to say, how much backlash do you get from the black community when you say things like that? I mean, because we just got to be 100. Because a lot of people say, hey, we want to have a conversation about race. All right, well, let's have it. Let's be 100 about it. Let's be completely honest with ourselves. Completely honest. And I get it. I talk to some of my colleagues on the floor. They're like, Byron, you can say a lot of things I can't say. I'm like, yeah, that's true. That's just the way it is. Yeah.
But we have to be honest with ourselves. The vast majority of police, when they engage people in my community, the interactions are fine. The interactions are actually done. A lot of the times, people in my community, we want the police there. Mm-hmm. We want the police because let's be very clear. The vast majority of crime that happens against black people is committed by black people. Mm-hmm. That's tough to say, but that's the truth.
Yeah. Don't
believe me? Go ask people in Dunbar right now. Who's in Dunbar committing crime against black people? Ask them. Seriously.
Well, how does that change?
I think that's a culture change, of in the black community. I think you're going to start seeing a shift in that as we talk right now. The one key stat that I feel for, as a black man in America, for the black community, which is incredibly important, is the formation of black families are on the rise again. You got to have father figures in these homes. I think black attainment in education is on the rise in the United States. That's a quality thing. I think 2-family homes in the black community is on the rise. That's a wonderful thing. And we're starting to see for the first time in 60 years, 60, 70 years in the United States, the rise of the black middle class again. It's happening right in front of our eyes. I went to college with a lot of people. My colleagues, where they got a college degree. It may have worked out. It may have not. They figured out a way to be successful in their lives. They're black middle class families raising their kids the right way. And I think all that stuff is helpful with respect to how the black community deals with law enforcement as we go forward. But I think it's important as we talk about this, we got to understand the vast majority of occurrences with police in the black community are actually positive. Mm-hmm. The sad part is when we see these flashpoints, right, and these flashpoints are just magnified in front of our eyes.
So you talked a little bit about, you were just talking about college, people going to college, and recently they're talking about, forgiving student loan funds.
Yeah.
And you have said that is not something you think is going to be in the best interest. Is that Is that your feeling on it? That would be a good thing to do? The student loan forgiveness program?
No, it's bad. It's bad policy. I was actually in the Senate testifying in front of Elizabeth Warren's committee on this Tuesday or Wednesday. And my statements were very clear, is that, there's a couple things. Number one, who's going to pay it? Are colleges going to go pay the money back? Well, if colleges pay the money back, then you can forget about people in college right now actually getting an education, or the people after them. So that's number one. Is it going to be the people who didn't go to college? Because frankly, that's what will happen. It'll be a forgiveness from the Treasury. The Treasury is going to have to pay that debt, which means people who didn't go to college are going to have to pay that debt, which means people who paid off their student loans are going to have to pay that debt, which means people who are actively paying their student loans right now are going to be making their payments, and they got to pay that debt. I just think it's the wrong policy. If we should be doing anything, we got to look at college affordability. And the last part that we should be looking at is looking at, a calculation of how much the federal government will lend depending on what you study. Listen, a humanities degree does not have the same value as an accounting degree. It just doesn't. It may have a value to you personally, but it doesn't have an economic value in our economy. And so we have to take a hard look at ourselves and say, why would we give you unlimited dollars to get a piece of paper that doesn't have economic value?
Or with an institution. I mean, really
Right.
looking at some of the institutions that, I have someone in my family who graduated with a degree and went to take the test that the degree prepared them for and couldn't pass the test, yet graduated with honors from the educational institution. How is that possible, that you can pay all that money, get honors, and then not pass the national exam?
Well, I think the tough part about student loan debt is that there's so many intimate decisions that go on in a person's life. We don't know. What if that person didn't study? And I don't want to be saying anything against it, but you just don't know what all this. Listen, I've been through college. There was a part of my student loan debt was really just for me to hang out. And I'm going to be 100% about it. I'm going to be very clear. There were years in my college life where I was hanging out and I was not serious, but I'm still having to pay that portion of the debt back too. It could have went a very different way and I would have still had to pay that debt. So was it wrong for me to have that debt when there were decisions I made in my life when I was in college? And I think that's how we have to look at that and really understand it. The second part is, and we're starting to reverse it in Florida and the country, telling people, young people, they have to go to college to be successful is a mistake. It is wrong. And we have misled a generation of Americans in that rating. We've misled a generation of Americans.
Why do you say that? Why do you say that?
Well, number one, not everybody's prepared to go do it. Number two, not everybody wants to go study in a field that's economically viable. If you were struggling in high school and then you went to college and you don't know what you're doing, why are you in college? I tell young kids now, when I talk to young kids who are about to graduate, I ask them, do you know what you want to do? They're like, well, no. I said, then don't go. And the parents look at me like, whoa, what are you talking about? And I'm telling the parents, you do not want to take on debt just to be in college, to have the experience, because that's going to come to an end. And then you're going to have to spend your life paying that money back. That is illogical. If you don't know what you want to do, go to your local community college, go to Florida Southwestern State College, take a couple classes, get a job and figure out your life and figure out your focus. And then at that point, if you want to go to 4-year college university, they're not going anywhere. If you're smart enough, they'll take you. You can find a way.
We have this dispute.
Yeah. So
one of the big things you ran on, one of the big
don't bring. We're going to save the water for the last. We got to talk about what I want to one more crime question. Yeah. Every morning we wake up, it seems like there's another mass shooting, and it was at FedEx. The last one was at FedEx. Some 19-year-old. We don't know what the issue is, what the reason is, but people just seem to be dying all the time from these mass shootings. Is it a gun problem or what's going on? I thought Biden was going to fix everything.
Yeah, that's what he thinks. No, it's a mental health issue.
Okay.
It's really a heart issue. And I tell people all the time, there is not a law on the books that can solve the human condition. Because if your personal human condition has serious questions to the point where you're willing to kill other people, then you don't care about the law. You don't care about somebody's life in front of you, then what do you care about what's in federal statutes or state statutes or local ordinances or whatever? That is the last thing on your mind. And so it's really about the human condition. Gun policy in the United States is we're actually in the right balance where we are right now. We have background checks. If you look at the mass shootings, the people who have conducted them either A, legally acquired their firearms going through background checks, or B, they stole the weapons.
Mm-hmm.
So what new law are we going to pass is going to stop those two eventualities? There isn't one. The one I always go back to is going back to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. Nicholas Cruz legally acquired his firearms. He went through all the background checks. Mm-hmm. He was on the FBI's radar. FBI didn't follow up. He was on the school district's radar. The school district didn't follow up. There were people who knew there were mental issues going on. His family knew, but nobody followed up. So is that the fault of background check laws, or is that the fault of some of the other apparatuses in government that didn't take the necessary steps to track Nicholas Cruz?
Is Biden going to try?
What about assault weapons? Do you think there should be more stringent?
Every weapon is an assault weapon. We got to go into language for a moment.
All right, let's go there.
Every weapon is an assault weapon. The soundboard, if Ed is angry enough, the soundboard can become an assault weapon.
But it can't fire rapid succession.
Actually, that's not true.
The soundboard can't.
Here's what I'm going to tell you. The difference between the weapon you can buy at a Walmart versus what our military has, and that's what people try to conflate the two. Military weapons have 3 settings: automatic fire, semi-automatic fire, and safety. The stores you buy, the guns you buy in Walmart or Target or whatever, or a local gun shop, it only has 2 settings. It is semi-automatic fire and safety. It is one trigger pull per round. That's what's allowed under the law. People are not walking around with bazookas. People are not walking around with RPGs. Mm-hmm. People don't have fully automatic weapons. If they augment the weapon to make it fully automatic, that is a violation of federal law. So the law is actually quite clear on this. What people say is like, oh, it's an assault style looking weapon. Well, guess what? Most murder in the United States is done with handguns. They're not done with AR-15s. They're not done with shotguns. The vast majority are done with handguns. And handguns have a federal 3-day waiting period. I can shoot if I have a 1911. That's my gun, okay? As an 8-round clip. If I pack 3 clips, I can get off 24 rounds inside of what? A minute?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't want to be glib. Is the crime somehow more heinous because I used an AR-15 instead of a 1911 45 caliber handgun? When my 1911 45 caliber handgun is probably more accurate than the AR-15?
Mm-hmm. You think Biden's going to do some kind of executive order to try and do something with the gun control to at least make it look like he's doing something on that?
He's going to try, but the president's actually quite limited in this.
Okay.
Congress has to act, and Congress, I will tell you, I don't think the votes are there to do that.
Okay.
Because if you actually look at the data of these shootings, and look, you talked about, so you said it seems like every single day there's something going on. Part of that is because big media knows. People watch the coverage of this. Mm-hmm. So what do? The second something happens, they push all the coverage to that, and they cover it for 2 or 3 days or however long they can get it to last. Mm-hmm. If there's and the other angle they use, if there's some racial angle to it, then that means they can push that coverage for a week to 2 weeks. If there's not, the story drops. Mm-hmm. That's what we saw with the guy with the Asian salons in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. They thought they could make it some white supremacy angle, and when they found out that the guy's not a white supremacist, they're like, okay, well, we got to drop the story. The story's over. And so these images are also pushed to us all the time to make Americans feel that, oh my gosh, this is happening all the time, and we're all in danger. It does happen too often, but are we all in danger? The answer is no.
Now, when you talk about mental health,
yeah,
what can be done? What can be done to help people gain access? Because I will say, in my family, there's someone trying to gain access to healthcare who has insurance, and the providers they're not taking anybody. They're all filled up. I mean, it's hard. At least in our experience, it's been hard to find mental health care, good or at all.
Oh, it's very tough because it's in high demand. It's in even more demand now coming out of COVID lockdowns.
Absolutely.
And there are definitely not enough providers. I think one of the things that we're going to have to do I do believe this from a state governmental level, not so much a federal governmental level, is actually invest significantly more in mental health and mental health apparatuses for people to get the care that they need.
And and how do you address? How would they address the access to it if people are underinsured or not insured at all?
The way you do that is a couple of things. Number one is about a lot of times when you're dealing with access issues, it's because there's not enough providers in the space, so there's a scarcity of the provider. And if there's a scarcity of the provider, then the cost of the provider's time now goes up. So what we have to look at is more slots in residencies and the like for people to be able to go and achieve that. The second thing we got to do is do more identification early on. A lot of this stuff, and if you've ever like really sat down and gone through counseling sessions and actually sat down with people who do this for a living, a lot of it stems from childhood. There is the trigger point in childhood that then lays out the decisions that we do as adults. And so a lot of this is trying to assess, and you know what, this is not something you really want schools to be doing. Schools are the easiest place to do it because they're the access point for most people at an early age. But you do want to make sure the apparatus exists, and we're going to frankly have to build one. And I don't have all the answers to this.
No, I'm not.
Where we can actually begin to assess and find the people who have these real triggers in life, these real heart issues in life, try to identify them and get them the help they need while also respecting their freedom and respecting their liberty. It's a very tough subject. Tough balance.
Before we get to the water, a couple of the crazies that your colleagues with in Washington are going to try and pack the court with four crazy liberal judges. Is that? Well, I didn't mean crazy, but liberal for sure. Is that going anywhere, or is that just something to show off that
it's not clear yet? It doesn't poll well. Pelosi said that she does not support it, but she can say whatever she wants. We'll see what actually happens. I'm actually very concerned about this one.
Okay,
let's be very clear. The reason why they think it's important now, and Ed Markey of Massachusetts just said it the other day. He said, "Well, Trump stole two seats." No, he didn't. He was, "Hey, how you doing?" No, he didn't. He literally appointed people under the Constitution that he was legally allowed to do, but that's the way they feel about it. The big thing is that Democrats have been accustomed to the Supreme Court being their ideological bent for 40 years in the United States, and they want it back. And so they say the quickest way is packing the court. I think that you have Democrats who are going to have heartburn about this, and they're not going to want to support it. It should not happen, but we're going to have to stay vigilant on it.
Yeah, and if it happens, if they do it, why wouldn't the Republicans do it?
If they did it, we'd be forced to do it.
And then the Supreme Court becomes a game. And even Ruth Bader Ginsburg was against it. Stephen Breyer was against it.
Well, Stephen Breyer's against it, and now you have Democrats who are calling for him to resign. And I laugh. I'm like, okay, whatever.
Right.
But I mean, look, here's the key thing. The key thing is that we're at this point in our politics. And I will tell you, I blame media for a lot of this. I mean, this Project Veritas video about CNN that just came out about CNN, and you could watch the coverage and know what they were doing.
Sure.
But it is clear that media is playing a heavy hand in our politics. And what it's actually doing, in my opinion, it is making our country become more tribal, where instead of with all the stuff that they're passing out of Congress right now, Nancy Pelosi is a 2-vote majority in the House. 2 votes.
Right.
There is no majority in the Senate. Kamala Harris is breaking ties. And the Democrats look at that as this is our opportunity to push all of our agenda. Like, no. They're being more aggressive now than they were when under Obama's first term. The first 100 days of Obama's first term, when they had 60 votes in the Senate and massive majorities in the House. And they're more aggressive today than they were then. It's because we have this tribalistic view in our politics today. A lot of this is pushed by media because media knows that, hey, if people love this stuff, just keep feeding them more and more and more, and people watch it. And we have to get back to protecting the republic. Like, I'm a conservative. I want conservative policies. The number one thing we got to do is protect the republic, because us elected officials now, we're going to be dead and gone. Hopefully the country's still here, but if we wreck it, it will not be here.
Yeah. All right, dear, ask a couple water questions, and then I'm going to, you know what I got to do. So you start the first one off. Sorry, I'm getting old, Byron.
Thank you.
That's all right.
Much. So,
we take water breaks here at Beach Talk Radio, everybody.
Water breaks, bathroom breaks. So water was a big issue for you running, and it's a big issue for the area. And we're getting into that season now and there's been reports about, the blue-green algae on Lake O. What kind of policies do you foresee putting in place to help with that?
So the number one thing is we have to make sure we're funding the CERT plan. We're funding the projects. I'll tell you right now that members on both sides of the aisle in Florida are committed to doing that. And so we're going to be pushing very hard in this infrastructure bill or other funding that comes forward to making sure that water money for Everglades restoration is in that budget so we can continue the work. It is critical that we get a couple things online. The C-43 reservoir should come online next year. That's going to help a lot. The biggest question is, how do we get over this year? Lake level is high. There's algae forming in the lake. We are aware of that right now. My office and other congressmen's offices we are on with Army Corps about the new LOSUM schedule of water releases. We're actually going through a couple of scenarios right now that I'm going to be sharing with my colleagues that we're going to take to the Army Corps for them to make those necessary adjustments in it. I was in Western Everglades 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
On a tour, and we have water level issues in the Everglades itself. And part of it is the Corps didn't release enough water there. And so what we have to get to is a more comprehensive schedule with the Corps in the short term. But intermediate long term is we have to finish the projects. It's just that simple. And then once we finish the projects, then we can have the necessary conversation about what are the other things that contribute to water issues we have. But I think finishing the projects is actually going to help a lot more than people realize. The other good thing that's happening, we don't talk about much in our area, are the water projects north of Lake Okeechobee, specifically ASR wells.
Mm-hmm.
And so the ASR wells north of Lake Okeechobee, I actually was having a conversation with Chauncey Gauss, who's on water management.
Mm-hmm.
Those projects are going through. And so ASR wells actually happen faster than it is to build a reservoir. That's one of the reasons I've been supportive of them, because it's a quick way to kind of get the job done. That work is going through right now. Their Southwest Florida Water Management District is moving ahead with those. But we just need to make sure we keep the money flowing to fix the project. I know this sounds weird for a conservative, but really the Lake Okeechobee system is designed by the federal government. The federal government has a responsibility to fix it and repair it and update it for the needs of our area today.
And what about, because on the other coast, St. Lucie, they're really pushing. Yeah, they're pushing hard, and so to not have the water come that way, which I get it, but we don't want it to come this way either.
And didn't Brian Mass succeed at that? Didn't he get them?
No.
Okay.
No. We had a conversation about that 2 days ago.
You and Brian?
We did.
Okay.
And so that's what I was saying. When you were in your water break, we were talking about actually sitting down and having a more comprehensive LOSUM schedule for the Corps. That the members could support, that the communities support. And so I know my office right now, we're going through that work right now so we can bring that back to Congressman Mass and also to the other members of Congress in the area and to get with the Army Corps on that.
So you've been working in conjunction with Congressman Mass? Because it would seem...
Not really.
It would seem like you have shared, at least on that point, there's a shared interest to not have it go their way more, not have it come our way more, and work on sending more south with a reasonable schedule.
The reality is that every part of the state needs water, and it's not just about sending it all south, because we need water coming down the
There's times when we need it and then we can't get it. Right.
It's more often than not we do need it, and that's just the way the system works. It's the quantity that comes. Mm-hmm. That's what our concern is.
And the quality of what's coming.
Well, I will tell you that phosphorus levels in the south part of the lake, where a lot of it comes out of, is significantly lower than in the northern part of the lake. The northern part of the lake, the phosphorus content is prohibitively higher. And so the lake itself has some natural cleaning mechanisms with its seagrass and so on and so forth, and frankly, just sunlight. So there are natural cleaning metrics in the lake itself. So, but the key thing is, and this is important, this is why I say controlling water north of the lake helps control the flow coming out of the lake. Because if we can control flow, it helps with the quality issues about how much water we're taking in. The other parts are, and this is also north of the lake, repairing the Kissimmee River basin to actually have more natural filtration will actually bring cleaner fresh water into the lake so that when it's dispersed out, it is fine. One of the issues we have is when we have, fresh water interacting with salt water, you have that issue here. We do need some of it. The problem is how much the Corps sends our way. Congressman Mass and I, we really had our first conversation about that a couple of days ago. We're going to go through a more comprehensive schedule. And it's not just the two of us. It's going to be Congressman Stubbe, Congressman Diaz-Balart, Congresswoman Washington Schultz, and the like. We're all going to, Congresswoman, oh gosh, I forgot her name. She's in Palm Beach. Frankel, and then the like. We're going to be all sitting down and going through this because it affects our entire state, frankly.
When you went out with the folks on Sanibel on a boat out there a couple weeks ago or whenever it was, and when they talked to you, what do they want you to do for them?
It was really about stressing lake level and how much water was going to come this way.
Okay.
The concern is, the lake is 2 feet higher than it was 2 years ago. We know what happened 2 years ago here.
And there's algae on it now. I mean, there's a bloom now.
That's right. Yeah. And so what we want to be able to do is get with the Corps. We've been very active with the Corps about that right now. And in some respects, what we really need the Corps to do is to deplete lake level now before the rainy season begins. We're taking in water from the lake right now. I think it's important people to understand that. The Corps is releasing water now. It's not massive releases, but they're releasing water now. And so what we need to do is make sure that the Corps understands that we want to have a lower lake level going into the rainy season, so we're not hurt here when it comes July, August, into September. That's the biggest thing we want right now. The other thing to understand is that the Herbert Hoover Dike just got completed.
Right.
So the lake can hold more water. The Corps knows this. So I am concerned about the higher lake level, but I also understand that the lake can hold more water now than it used to be able to hold because they just got finished with dike rehabilitation. Who do you hear from on Fort Myers Beach that's concerned about the water? You. Okay. I talked with members of the city council, and they've been talking with my office. And as we go through this LOSHM schedule, we're going to continue to make sure we have a lot of support from the municipalities here, whether it's Fort Myers Beach or the like. And would you say it's the number one issue that people ask you about? Because when we were asking for questions in advance, it's always about the water. Yeah. So you want to tell the people that this is what you're trying to accomplish for them when it comes to the water is what? We want to have, number one, a much better comprehensive lake discharge schedule that will not only help our coast, but frankly help the entire state, because the Everglades needs water too, and that's been an issue. Florida Bay starting to get worked out. St. Lucie County does need water, but they don't need as much water as we need. I totally understand that. The second part is making sure that we fund the projects. The one thing that will take care of a lot of this is funding the necessary projects, doing the work, and getting the work done. That takes consistent funding, which is not an Army Corps issue. That's a Congress issue. Okay. We have to consistently get it done. The Florida delegation is singing from one sheet of music when it comes to that. That's great. And so we're going to continue to push for that.
So a question that got sent in, and I'm not sure, if you'll be able to address this, but why is Florida reluctant to adopt new water quality standards for cyanotoxins as the EPA has recommended in 2019?
That one I don't have an answer for. I think that's an issue where state DEP is actively working on it. Let me be clear. I mean, Governor DeSantis, his care and his focus on the environment has been unmatched, frankly, in the history of our state from the executive level. So I don't want to say that it's something that they're not looking at, but I'm also leery when the EPA puts out standards, because federal EPA puts out standards for different reasons, and there's more things that they're considering than just Florida, because they're looking at the entire country versus what Florida DEP is looking at is specifically Florida. And so I would say, and I got to go back and do more research, but my first inclination is when federal EPA puts out something, I got to look and see what, frankly, are the reasons that they put out that standard, and what does that mean specifically for our state? What
about, reducing some of the toxins that go in from things like pesticides and all of that? Could there be more stringent standards or incentives to look at different alternatives?
Well, I think one of the best alternatives that you can see actually happens at the Naples Botanical Garden. They actually have been doing this now for about 6-7 years, where if you look at the plant life that sits at the shelf of their waters, and they have like man-made lakes in there, some natural lakes, but some man-made, they have different grass, frankly, than what we put on the edge of golf courses and the edge of our retention ponds and the edge of our canals in most of Southwest Florida. And the reason they did that is because what they said was that those natural grasses actually filter and keep the water cleaner, as opposed to just bringing Floritam right up to the edge of some canal waterway, which gets fertilizer thrown on it and the like, and then that seeps. It literally does seep into those canals. The data is very clear. And one of the things, and this is the part I try to make sure people understand, it's not all Lake Okeechobee. No. We have septic tank issues along the Caloosahatchee that seep into the Caloosahatchee. We do have runoff from fertilizer that runs off into canals, waterways, and the Caloosahatchee. All of these things contribute. And so I think, what we have to look at, and this is something that really local governments should really start to take a stronger look at. Lee County can do this, Collier County can do this. You don't need the federal government actually shouldn't be doing this, is actually taking a look at some of these natural grasses and frankly, plant them. In Collier County, we spend, Collier County probably spends $600,000 to $700,000 a year just watering the medians. How about we actually just put natural grasses by these canal beds so that, with one, you really don't have to fertilize, and two, actually help to clean some of the water that runs off naturally here.
So a couple other quick issues. The border is out of control. And when Trump was the president, they were yelling and screaming that he was putting kids in cages. And now it just seems like it's a free-for-all down there. They raised the cap again yesterday because the Democrats were screaming. What is going on down there?
I was in the border last weekend. I was just down there. I was down at the El Paso section of the border. It's a crisis. The kids are in cages. Let's be very clear about this. The kids are in cages. You have most of the young girls I saw, they were coming from Guatemala. Mm-hmm. They were saying their journey to the southern border was 5 days by bus, 20 days by foot and by bus. The cartel is trafficking children. And I think let's take a step back. The one thing people need to understand, every square mile south of our border is controlled by the cartel. There is not a thing that moves across the cartel without moves up from Mexico into the United States without the cartel being paid. And I'm talking about commercial trucks. It's $250 for a commercial truck to move across the southern border out of Mexico. $250 per truck. The cartel gets paid. When children come across the southern border, they are getting paid. And so because we had enforcement policies that were changed by President Biden on day one of his administration, the cartel looked at it and said, oh, okay, well, now we're going to start moving unaccompanied minors across the border. They're making $15 million a day doing this.
Wow.
And at the same time, it's a shell game. They're moving the kids over here. When Border Patrol comes to intercept those children, then they move the fentanyl and the cocaine over here.
No kidding.
That is what's happening on the southern border. Border Patrol will tell you specifically that is what they do. They're sitting with night vision on the Rio Grande Valley section of the border.
Those guys or us guys?
Both.
Okay.
We're looking through night vision. We're looking at the cartel. The cartel's looking back at us. When they see us intercept a bunch of kids, and the kids are told walk right up to Border Patrol. They're not trying to evade Border Patrol.
Right.
They walk right up to them. And once they intercept Border Patrol, the cartel moves their drugs. That's the shell game that's going on the southern border. The problem with what the administration is doing, the administration, in my opinion, they know this, but their interests are very different. And so I went to Fort Bliss. I toured the Fort Bliss facility. I went unannounced. I just showed up and said, I'm a member of Congress. I'm touring your facility. They are literally building massive tents. It's a tent village on Fort Bliss that's being added to every single day to house thousands and thousands of these kids. These kids are in a tent where they're in cots, 2 to a cot, in a tent that's maybe the size of a football field, 2 to a cot. These tents house easily 1,000 to 1,500 kids. Tight quarters. Oh, they're wearing masks, but they're not socially distanced. So let's talk about the COVID piece a little bit. But they're not taking the border seriously. We have a humanitarian crisis that was created by politics. Mm-hmm. Because if they kept the stay in Mexico policy, which is what border security will tell you, if they kept the stay in Mexico policy intact instead of ripping it up because Donald Trump supported it and Donald Trump put it into place, then we wouldn't have these issues we're having on the southern border now.
How do they get fixed?
You have to put the stay in Mexico policy back in place.
It's never going to happen.
That's number one. Yeah. You got to put it back in place. And the second part, which I totally believe, and it's going to be harsh for people to hear, we have to put kids on a plane and take them back to their country.
Where are their parents, by the way?
The parents are either illegally in the United States or they're back in the home country. So
they send the kids without the parents, thinking the kids are going to be accepted by America because that's what we do. And sooner or later, the parents will be able to get here.
Sponsor their parents to come. Yes.
I see. And they're all going to vote Democrat, and that's the reason.
That's the game.
Okay.
And it's a terrible game, but this is why when I've been doing media the last week, I'm telling people, we the American people are being played. Because we are a compassionate people.
Yeah.
We don't want to see kids trafficked. We want every child to get a better life. But the cartel is making millions and millions of dollars every single day.
Wow.
The administration is playing politics with this. That's why they won't go to the southern border and they won't actually look at what's going on. These kids are coming in the Donna detention facility in McAllen. The facility is designed for 500 kids. There's 4,000 kids in those facilities. Yikes. They're literally laying on top of each other in these facilities.
And so what's the process? Are they processing the kids through something and then they're all being let into the United States? And then where do they go?
So border security is only allowed to hold the kids for 72 hours.
Oh.
That's the law. They're only allowed to hold them for 72 hours. HHS is coming in and taking these kids. When I was at the facility in El Paso, we pull up. We're out there talking to the head of Border Patrol in that sector. While we're talking, 15 kids are being walked out of the facility with an adult, being put on a van, and they're leaving.
To go where?
So I stop. I'm like, wait, where did those kids just go? They go, oh, HHS took them. And literally when we were there, and I was there for an hour and a half, HHS came and picked up 4 groups of kids in an hour and a half. Four groups. And they're just walking off like everything's okay. So the last group, we came back out of the facility. The last group, we're all standing there, last questions, last comments. Border Patrol is talking about all the different things they do. Okay. There was a group of about 25 to 30 kids who were being walked out of the facility to get on a coach bus, like, a coach tour bus. So I walk off and I'm like, I'm going to go see what's going on here. I walk over, I talk to the adult in charge. I say, where are you taking these kids? I'm a member of Congress. Where are these kids going? The person looks right at me. I can't talk to you. You have to talk to them. Oh, the hell you're at? Where are you taking these kids? And I just kept pressuring her. She goes, San Diego.
San Diego.
So they were taking these kids on a bus from El Paso to San Diego to put them in a hotel. So what the administration is doing right now, they're creating these massive tent facilities like they will have the one at Fort Bliss. That's for kids 13 to 17 years old. The kids under 13, they're taking them to hotels. The hotels are basically being leased up by HHS, the entire hotel. They're putting tarps over the marquee, and they're housing the kids in these hotels all across the United States.
And then what?
Yeah.
And then what they're doing is they're bringing in these social workers under nonprofit contracts, and they're contacting the parents here in the United States or a family member here in the United States. And once they set up a conduit to pass the child on, they're passing the child on. The child is in the country illegally. Border Patrol tells us that they are releasing kids who are in the country illegally to their parents who are in the country illegally. This is happening. When I was in the El Paso facility, there was a little boy who was on the phone. He was in tears. Kid's crying. He's 8 years old. The kid is crying. He's in a detention facility. He's on the phone with the mother. I asked one of the Border Patrol to interpret the call. I said, what's going on this call? She's interpreting it. He was like, he's on the phone with his mother. The mother is telling him that the aunt's coming in a couple days to get him. I said, why isn't the mother getting them? They said, likely because she's in the country illegally and she doesn't want to get deported because the number is a United States number.
The cell phone number.
It's a United States cell phone number. So they're in the country. They're in the country illegally. The Democrats are adding to the problem on purpose. So when the administration said they wanted to keep the refugee count low to stop the influx, that's when you had Ocasio-Cortez, who you haven't heard from the last 100 days because Joe Biden is doing everything she wants. Then she pipes up and says, that is unconscionable. You have to increase the refugee count. It's humanitarian. No. You got 2 problems. Number one, El Salvador, Guatemala, those countries, they're corrupt. The governments are corrupt. They are not allowing a prosperous society in those countries to flourish. They're getting rich on the backs of the money that is sent down to those countries. The drug cartels run those countries. So people have nothing. So let's start there. They have nothing. When we send money down there, that money is taken. It doesn't go to the people. Maybe a fraction goes to the people. The rest of it goes to the people in power, the people in charge. Then, because of our weak policies, the cartel knows, and families here in the United States know, hey, if you just send the child will get in.
Right. What about the kids that are being sent to San Diego or somewhere else with their parents that are not in the country? What happens to them?
Family member?
A family member comes
somebody's
to get them.
here. Gotcha.
They said there's one 17-year-old girl they've had for 300 days. 300 days. She's just sitting there because they can't find a place to place her. So HHS is actively trying to place these kids all across the United States. This is the biggest child deployment probably in the history of the country. There were 172,000 incursions with unaccompanied minors last month. We are going to break the record for unaccompanied minors coming to the United States this year, next month at the current rate.
Wow.
We're going to break the record.
You don't really see a lot of that on CNN or anything like that.
CNN's about to change their coverage to climate change.
I'm sure.
They're going to start talking about climate change. They're kind of talking about January 6th enough.
Yeah.
They don't have Trump to talk about anymore. So now they're going to start talking about climate change. They do not want to talk about this.
What are the chances that the Republicans win the House back in 2 years?
Oh, very good. Very, very good. We totally believe we're going to take back the majority. The Democrats, and this is in part because they've had to acquiesce to Ocasio-Cortez and the squad. They have pushed every radical agenda item that they want. And this part is very clear. And I want people to understand they're not just pushing it to show who they are so we can beat them and they lose forever. They fundamentally think that if they push their agenda, Americans will accept it.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing they believe is they're reorienting what the center of politics are. And the more they push their agenda, the more people say, oh my gosh, I don't like that and that and that, but this one's not too bad.
Mm-hmm.
But when you do that, you change the center of politics. So the political center is shifting. I believe their whole mission is to shift the political center of politics so that in 10 years and 20 years, the things we thought were just crazy radical, okay, fine, just let it go.
Yeah. Last question for me is, who runs for president in 24? Is it going to be Trump or is it going to be DeSantis?
Tread lightly.
Listen, that's above my pay grade,
Oh,
man.
stop. Nothing's above your
my
pay grade,
man.
I've never seen you cop out of a question.
I will say this. One of them will run. Let me leave it at that. One of them will run. Look, I think, the president, has he talked about it? Yes. Has Ron talked about it? Yeah.
He's on a first name basis.
No kidding. I noticed that.
Yeah.
If Trump doesn't run,
The governor.
if Trump doesn't run,
Do I think
there's no
the
doubt
governor runs?
DeSantis runs.
I think he does.
And does he have the best chance? Because I mean,
think
a
he
lot of
does.
people think Florida did okay through this virus.
Oh man, Florida did great. You want to know how I know? Look around you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, Milton Friedman said it best. If you ever want to judge the success of public policy, look at the movement of people.
Mm-hmm.
The vote of the feet matters more than any poll that they put out on CNN. People have been flocking to Florida.
That's right.
Our governor has done a tremendous job. I'd say it all the time now, he's America's governor because he's done the best job. I think that if President Trump doesn't run, I think Ron DeSantis runs for governor. I think he gets the nomination.
Don't you think it would be better if Trump just sat on the sidelines because he's too much of a lightning rod?
I think everybody's got to make that decision for themselves, the president included. Everybody's got to make that decision.
So, well, we need to let you go. Do you have plans this evening?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to be in Palm Beach.
Yes, you are.
At the Palm Beach Lincoln Reagan dinner in Mar-a-Lago. It's supposed to be like a star-studded affair.
Yes.
They have some congressman that's going to be there from Southwest Florida, and then Brian Mast, Rick Scott, Marco Rubio, Ron DeSantis, Mike Pompeo.
When we were talking
Wilbur
about
Ross, and there may be a special guest.
Yeah,
from what I'm hearing.
Pompeo's got a future too in the.
Pompeo might run too.
You have to open it. Go ahead and open it.
What is this?
We got to end on a little jokey note here.
It's a picture of.
No, it's your invitation.
Oh,
so
get
there
out of
you
here.
go.
Oh, it's going to be at Mar-a-Lago.
He's on twice.
Oh, that's great.
And that's a generous picture of him, by the way.
I do want to make sure I let everybody know on Fort Myers Beach that Congressman Byron Donalds, who's a congressman now, said he would come back when he was running if he won, and he came back, and it didn't take but one call to your office, and Madeline was great, and she just set it up, and we appreciate that you do that, and
and all the time you spent here today.
Yeah, it was great, and we apologize for the parking, but you're a man of your word, and we love your policies, and the comments from people today have been amazing. They love you, and so thank you for coming on.
Yes, and I do want to remember to give this to you. This was from one of the local Marine Resource Task Force folks.
Some water stuff.
And some water stuff, and from the Turtle folks. And
thank you so much for coming down. We appreciate it.
It was great to be here. I tell people all the time that, you guys pay me. So really, my time is your time. Don't get too carried away now.
Right.
My time is your time, honestly. And the great part is I'm about to go get me a milkshake out of Dairy Queen.
Nice. Awesome. Very nice. Thanks. Byron Donalds, everybody. Thanks, big hand. Thank you.
Thank you so
much. Thanks for coming down, Byron. We appreciate it. And before we get out of here, folks, we want to make sure that we tell you about a couple of our great supporters. Of course, we want to tell you first about, let me see here, Don't Itch It. Don't Itch It, one of our longest sponsors, Island Oils LLC, don'titchit.com. You can go there. The weather's changing. It's getting cool. It's getting hot. It's getting cool. It's getting hot. You're sitting outside. You're enjoying the nice weather. And then all of a sudden, boom, there's flies around. There's gnats around. There's no-see-ums around. And you get out the nice spray, and you get out the nice smelling spray. And Byron's shaking hands and kissing babies right now. No babies out there? You got the wrong mic, but that's okay. What one you got? Number 2. Yeah, there you go. I think you shut it off by accident. So we're going to get back to no water added, no chemicals, no synthetics. Smells amazing. And what you want to do is you want to go online right now. Do us a favor and go online right now. Island Oils LLC. or don'titchit.com. How do you come up with a better name than that for bug spray? And
No, that was a very good one.
yeah. And order yourself a little spritzer for tonight or tomorrow, and they'll mail it right out. It's made right here in Florida. It's not made in China. It's made in the local neighborhood. Or you can stop by Bait and Wait, Snook Hut Bait and Tackle, for goodness sake, or the Lighthouse Island Resort, which is really right across the street.
And I will say that I ran into it when I was at Estero Outfitters renting kayaks. They had it in their spot too, where they rent kayaks and many other things.
All right.
And we had a great time there.
Yeah, and I'm going to make sure that you read
yeah,